Ethan and Lily had always dreamed of owning a home in a quiet suburban neighborhood. After years of hard work and moving from one cramped apartment to another, they finally found their dream house, a cozy, two-story home on a tree-lined street. Ethan, a former military man, and Lily, his caring wife, were excited about starting a family here. The house was perfect, with a spacious backyard and a nursery that Lily had been decorating for months. They couldn't wait to bring their baby into this peaceful, ideal setting, but peace was something they would soon realize they would have to fight for. The Homeowners Association HOA had been a constant thorn in their side since they moved in. It started with small complaints like the color of their front door not meeting the HOA's approved shade of blue, or their lawn not being trimmed exactly the right way. Ethan, wanting to avoid confrontation, made small adjustments, even though he felt the rules were excessive. But it wasn't long before the HOA's demands escalated, with each new complaint being more ridiculous than the last. One day, Ethan came home to find a letter waiting for him, an official warning from the HOA. It stated that their house had been marked for non-compliance with multiple rules, and they were facing fines unless they corrected everything within a matter of days. Among the list of infractions, one item stood out. Their mailbox had been placed a few inches too far to the left of their driveway. Ethan couldn't believe it. It was absurd. He spent weeks painting the mailbox himself, putting all his effort into making it perfect, and now, over a few inches, they were being threatened with heavy fines. Lily, who was already stressed from her pregnancy, tried to calm Ethan down. She hated seeing him so upset. She suggested that they just pay the fine and let it go, but Ethan wasn't willing to back down. He felt this was more than just a small mistake. It was the HOA pushing them around for no reason. As the days passed, Ethan began to feel a knot in his stomach. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. His instincts, honed by years of military training, told him something wasn't right. It wasn't long before the first of the men came to their door. Ethan had just come in from the garage, wiping his hands on his jeans when the doorbell rang. He opened it to find a man in his mid-40s, wearing a dark suit and a cold expression. He introduced himself as one of the HOA's enforcers. "You've received multiple warnings," the man said, handing Ethan a thick envelope. "You have 2 days to address these issues, or we'll have no choice but to escalate." Ethan took the envelope but could feel his temper rising. He wanted to throw the man off his doorstep, but he kept his cool. "I'll look over this and get back to you," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the anger brewing inside him. As the days passed, the tension in the household grew. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the HOA wasn't just about rules anymore. They were targeting them specifically. And Lily, who had always been the calming influence in their relationship, couldn't help but worry. She could see how much this was affecting Ethan, and her worry grew. The constant stress of dealing with the HOA was wearing him down, and she knew it was starting to take a toll on his health as well as hers. She was 7 months pregnant, and the last thing she needed was added pressure. Then came the night that everything changed. Ethan had just finished dinner and was in the living room with Lily, watching her try to relax on the couch with her feet propped up. The house was quiet, save for the low hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. That's when Ethan heard a noise outside, a faint shuffle of footsteps, too deliberate to be a stray animal. He stood up, his heart racing, and motioned for Lily to stay seated. He peered out the front window. 3 figures were standing in the shadows near the edge of their driveway. It was too dark to make out their faces, but their movements were erratic, almost menacing. Ethan's instincts kicked in. He moved toward the kitchen, his military training taking over as he grabbed his Glock 19 from the drawer where he kept it for protection. He knew it might be nothing, but something in his gut told him otherwise. Lily, noticing the change in his demeanor, asked, "What's going on?" "I don't know," he replied, his voice low. "Stay here. Lock the door." Ethan moved quietly toward the door, carefully peeking through the blinds again. The figures were now moving closer, and one of them was carrying something, a crowbar. he thought. His pulse quickened. These weren't just ordinary trespassers. This was something planned. He couldn't risk them getting any closer. He loaded the Glock and held it at his side, ready to act. The doorbell rang, followed by a firm knock. The men were now right at his doorstep. Ethan opened the door slowly, his hand firmly gripping the handle of the gun, concealed behind the door. The man who spoke earlier stood in front, flanked by the other two. "We're here to collect," the man said, his voice cold and unfazed by Ethan's clear unease. "The HOA has sent us to make sure you comply. You've been warned." Ethan stood his ground, trying to keep his voice steady despite the anger bubbling inside him. "This is harassment. You have no right to be here." One of the men moved to push past him. Ethan didn't hesitate. "Step back," he ordered, his military voice commanding. "I won't say it again." The men hesitated, sizing him up. That's when one of them took a step forward, his hand reaching for something in his coat pocket. Without thinking, Ethan raised his Glock and fired a shot into the air. The loud bang echoed through the street, and the men froze. Silence followed, thick and tense. "Leave now," Ethan commanded, his voice low but firm. "I won't warn you again." The men exchanged nervous glances before one of them muttered something under his breath, and they turned on their heels, retreating into the shadows. Ethan didn't lower the gun until they were out of sight, and even then, his hands shook slightly. He didn't want to resort to violence, but the situation left him no choice. He closed the door, bolting it shut behind him, and turned to find Lily standing in the hallway, her face pale. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan nodded, but he couldn't shake the adrenaline coursing through him. "We're okay," he said, trying to reassure her. "But I think this is far from over." The next morning, Ethan woke to the sound of sirens. A police officer was at his door, responding to a disturbance report from the neighbors. Ethan explained the situation, showing the officer the letter from the HOA and detailing the men's visit the previous night. It was clear to the officer that the HOA's tactics were extreme, but there was little that could be done unless the men returned or the HOA escalated further. Ethan didn't care about the police report. He wasn't afraid of the HOA anymore. He would do whatever it took to protect his family, but Lily's fears were growing. She knew the stress was taking a toll on Ethan, and the baby wasn't due for long. They couldn't keep living in this kind of fear. So, Ethan decided to take matters into his own hands. He gathered evidence of the HOA's illegal actions, including the harassment and the thugs they had hired. He contacted a lawyer who could help them file a lawsuit, exposing the HOA's corruption. In the following weeks, the pressure was unbearable. The constant legal meetings, paperwork, and the looming threat of further confrontation weighed on both Ethan and Lily, but they fought through it, side by side. Their love for each other and their unborn child kept them going, even when it felt like the entire world was against them. Finally, after months of legal battles, the HOA was forced to back down. Their corrupt practices were exposed, and they were sued for damages. The thugs who had harassed Ethan and Lily were no longer a threat, and the HOA was required to pay restitution to the couple. Ethan and Lily stood together on the porch of their home, relieved but changed. The experience had tested their resolve, but they had come out stronger. As they prepared to welcome their child into the world, they knew they had fought for their peace, their home, and their future, and nothing would ever take that from them again.